The Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie was finally released today, and although it's only been out for a day, this movie holds so many Easter eggs, references, and lore, tons of lore that I'm going to be discussing in this laid-back video, in an attempt to try to solve the FNAF 2 movie and the future of the movie's timeline. This will be a different type of video, which is basically a relaxing rant of everything I noted down for the movie and everything I really wanted to discuss. So it won't be as scripted as most of my videos are, since I'm busy with other videos like the Help Wanted retrospective video and the Help Wanted as a classic FNAF game, which are both coming later this month. So my name is Bronze Films, and enjoy me yapping about this movie for however long, and let's get started. This video will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, please get away from this video, go watch the movie and support the amazing creators that made this movie, and then come back and enjoy me yapping about this movie. Okay, final spoiler warning, and let's just jump straight into it. So I just got back from the theater and I really enjoyed this movie. I definitely enjoyed it more than the last movie, and if I were to give it a rating, I'd definitely give it a 9 out of 10 or even a 10 out of 10. One of the biggest complaints from the last movie was that it wasn't scary enough, but this movie definitely is. There's a couple jump scares that really got me, especially towards the end, so I definitely think they improved on it, and just in general, from the set production, the animatronics, like everything, they did such a good job, and you really feel like you're in this FNAF universe more than like the first one, and even then they did a good job. So I really enjoyed it, and if you're watching this video and you just don't mind the spoilers, and if you just haven't seen it, still please go check it out. Even if you don't think you're gonna enjoy it, or you just don't think it's for you, just go check it out. I promise you'll enjoy some aspect of it. It was just really cool. So I really want to talk about the critiques of this movie that much in this video. I really just want to talk about the lore, of course. I did bring a notebook in the movie, and I took notes of things as much as I could. So my notes were all, just gibberish at one point, but these are things that I noted. And the first thing I really want to talk about is Charlie, Emily, or Charlotte. Charlotte? I feel like I'm saying it wrong. Charlotte. And then, of course, the puppet. So the first thing this movie does is it gives us a date, which is something the FNAF franchise rarely does. But this was cool because we finally got basically a confirmation on the death date of Charlie. Really, the biggest debates are 1985, 1983, or 1987, which I know a lot of people believe in now, which is great. I was personally 1983 or 1987. I didn't mind either one. But this one finally gives us a date, 1982. Now, obviously, the movies are in its own timeline, so that doesn't mean that Charlie died in 1982 in the games, but it is really cool we finally got a date, at least in the games universe. So yeah, Charlie died in 1982, and that's when the flashback actually starts. Really quick before I jump into anything else, we actually get an Easter egg for Five Nights at Candy's. That's a spin-off fan game in Scott Cawthon's fan universe, and it's like in an arcade machine you see Candy, which is really cool because I like when Scott kind of canonizes these characters. Like he did it with Sparky in the first film, and now we have Five Nights at Candy's, which was really cool. So with these flashbacks, we really get a sense of her character and her motives, which really do pay off later. But of course, we learn that she's best friends with Vanessa, and that she really only does rely on the puppet, kind of hinting at how bad of a father Henry really is, which we also learn about later. But here she is trying to save a victim of Williams, and she's successful. She goes to the back, grabs the kid, and is able to reunite him with his mother. But of course, she gets stabbed a lot in the process, where she then goes down the trapdoor, comes back up with the puppet, and that's kind of where that possession starts. After this, we get newspapers of the accident, and we learn that Fazbear's Entertainment wasn't held liable at all, and that they only sent their condolences, which really does suck for Henry. We don't have clear images of the newspapers yet, but it seems that after the accident, the original Freddy Fazbear's closed, and that's when they would open the newer one, where we see the animatronics from the first FNAF movie. So in the present day, we then learn that the puppet is actually being held and trapped in this pizzeria by Vanessa using her music box and some kind of security perimeter. It's interesting because when the Ghostbusters go there, one of them then deactivates it, and that's when the puppet actually possesses her. It's this really, I think, horrifying scene, seeing kind of that possession happen, and then we see her even run after Michael, which I'll talk about soon, important character. But this is something we've never seen before in the FNAF franchise. I'd say the closest thing we got is Ennard inside of Michael Afton. That was like a mix of an animatronic and human, but this is full on, like, the bottom half of her was the puppet, and then just her head, you could see this human head. And something we've never really seen before. It was super weird. It then happens with Abby and then Vanessa at the very end of the movie, which I'll also talk about. But it's interesting to think if this is exclusive just to the movie, or if it applies to the games as well, and if it does, what other animatronics can this happen to? Or is it just with the puppet? Because it's what it seems like. It only seems like that the puppet can possess people. But again, how? How does this happen? It's not really something we have a clear answer on. Maybe we will a couple games or a couple movies down the line, but for now it's more of just something that happens. And the rules of it also don't make too much sense if you think about it, because when she leaves the first girl's body, she definitely does kill her, but then with Abby, she's alive. But with Vanessa, we don't know if she's going to be alive or dead, so it's not clear if she if the person stays alive after being possessed, or if there's some like long-term effects. We don't really learn that, but maybe we will in the next movie if something wrong with Abby. At the end of the movie, Michael uses a different music box that Henry gives him to, in a sense, calm down the puppet once more, and that's how she's able to leave Abby's body. And I think this is something we'll see probably with Lefty eventually. Now I know it's down the line and a couple movies away, but it seems that this music is the only way to calm her down and to really stop her. So I'm sure with this Lefty, I don't know if it'll just play the music out loud or something like that, and then it'll be able to trap her. So it's cool how they're already kind of setting up some mechanic and some way to stop her, just like in the games, of course, with, you have to wind up the music box. But here it's just playing it right in front of her, and that's really the only way to stop her, is what it seems like. The puppet design just amazing. I think it was probably the scariest part of the movie. There are a couple of jump scares where she just jumps at people. Like, she jumps at Abby out of Toy Chica's body in the scene with a loud scream, and I think that was probably one of the scariest parts of the movie. It also just really does seem like the puppet is going to be the vengeful spirit in the movie's timeline and not Golden Freddy. Especially because, I'll talk about this later, but at the end of the movie, the missing children souls are freed, which is not something I thought we'd see in this movie, not even really in the next one, but they are freed. And, meaning Golden Freddy isn't there anymore with William, and again, I'll talk about that soon. So it just really does feel like the puppet is because the puppet is the only one left. Charlie is the only spirit left after they're freed. So it does seem like they're setting her up to be the vengeful spirit, which does make a lot of sense. But even then, in the movie, it's made clear that she doesn't blame William for her death, which I thought was interesting. She blames the parents, and that's kind of the big premise of the movie. She sends out the toy animatronics to kill the parents because that's who she blames. Because no one listened to her in the beginning of the movie. Everyone pushed her away. The parents said, the adults are talking, go away, and she basically got killed because of that. Now, I don't know if this will be like a FNAF 1 movie scenario where someone will have to make her realize, like, no, it wasn't the parents' fault, it was William, go after him. I can kind of see that being in FNAF 3, they're fighting William, and the only way to stop her is with the puppet, and to somehow make her realize that he's the one at fault, and that's kind of how that movie went. But again, it really does seem like the puppet, the vengeful spirit one, and hey, I mean, if we go all the way down to FNAF Ultimate Custom Night, I feel like it would be the puppet torturing William in hell and not Golden Freddy, unless we get a reveal that there's another soul inside Golden Freddy, Garrett, Crying Child, whatever that looks like, which I'll also talk about soon, don't worry, we'll talk about it a lot. Just because obviously in the games, the vengeful spirit, Cassidy or Andrew, whoever you want to say it is, Crying Child is torturing William in hell, or his nightmare, purgatory, whatever. But here, it definitely looks like it's going to be the puppet, and I think that'll be such a cool twist, and just a good way to go about it, because we definitely know that Charlie is a unique spirit in the games, but here they're really pushing that idea because they now kind of have an idea of how the games work. Because obviously in FNAF 2, when we had the puppet and this kind of reveal, we didn't really know about Charlie or how that would all, lead to FNAF 6. But now we do, now we can do this world building, and I think it'll lead to her being the vengeful spirit. So pretty cool. So moving on, I now want to talk about one of the biggest reveals from the movie, being that Freddy Carter's character is actually Michael Afton, which is something I feel like most of us weren't expecting, especially because we already had Michael Schmidt. I think a lot of us with the first movie assumed somehow they would make him the Afton stand-in and Garrett would be the Crying Child and, figure that out. And I know many of us thought that Garrett would be the puppet and that his dad was somehow Henry in the flashbacks, and that's why William would even target Garrett, which still makes sense. But yes, I think he did an amazing job. It was such a cool idea, not only having him as a different character from Michael Schmidt, which is a theory on its own in the games, but also having him as like an evil character trying to carry on the legacy of his father. I already saw some people saying that is wrong in the lore in that sense, but I don't really think it can be wrong with the lore in the movies because it's its own thing. So first of all, but in the same time, in the movies or in the game, Michael isn't technically the best person in FNAF 4, and I know he's a child then, but even then later on, we know he's like willingly following his father's orders, going to Circus Baby's entertainment and rental and looking for his sister. So he isn't clearly separated from his father in the games, and he's still listening to him and not necessarily working with him like with murders or anything, but he definitely still has some relationship with him. I think this movie is just kind of redefining that and pushing it to its limits, having him being this evil character, because I'm pretty sure it's revealed that he also was in charge of Fall Fest. He does say that Aunt Jane, which also she's alive, something I just throw out there, because I know I really did think that she died in the first FNAF movie, killed by Golden Freddy, but no, she was just attacked, knocked out, and she kind of reignited the flame of the Fazbear Entertainment, and in a way made it popular by kind of spreading these her story that she was attacked, and that's kind of where FazFest comes from. We know Michael was most likely in charge of the actual event itself, again just trying to carry on the legacy, and he's the one who wants to free the toy animatronics, free Charlie, and then basically just murder people like his father. We don't have a clear motive besides just to carry on his father's legacy. There could definitely be some greater motive like agony, remnant, you could go that route, or it could just simply be for murders. But I do think there is some greater reason we'll find out about later. It could be some reason to like make William more powerful. Who knows? It could be any reason. But yeah, Michael Afton. Now, it does bring up a lot of questions at the same time, because now that we have two Michaels, that kind of carries on to the rest of the movies. Which one is going to have what role? Is he going to continue to be the villain? And so forth. So a lot of questions that I want to try to answer right now. Now, in FNAF 3, I personally believe it's going to be Michael Afton who's in charge of the Fazbear Fright experience for the haunted house we learn about in the post-credit scene, which is something we'll talk about later, don't worry. But in that credit scene, we find Springtrap, we find that these employees of the haunted house are getting props, anything they can from the location to bring it to the haunted house to recreate the haunted house, or what did they say, Fazbear Entertainment experience, which is pretty cool idea. I like how they're doing it. Different from the games, because in the games it's mainly believed that the FNAF 1 location does eventually become the FNAF 3 location, but still cool. And nonetheless, I think it's Michael Afton in charge of that location, and that he'll essentially be reunited with his father, and in that sense they could be working together. Because again, in the games, he is the security guard of the FNAF 3 location. It's father versus son, but here it seems like they could be working together. Now, I don't know what Michael's role would be, because I don't necessarily think Springtrap needs help in that sense to, like, fight or kill whoever's in the location. But I do like the idea that it's Michael trying to carry on his legacy no matter what, and that he's in charge of this new location and not someone else like Henry, like we assumed, or really anyone else. And we do get the infamous line where he says, "A real one." We found a real one from the FNAF 3 phone dude voice lines, which is pretty cool. I'll talk about that more later. So yeah, Michael Afton in charge of FNAF 3 location 100%, meaning he's probably going to be fighting Michael Schmidt, Vannesa, and Abby, however that's going to work. Now, why they would go to this other location, also something we don't really know. In FNAF 2, the reason they went to a location again was to find Abby, so it could be something like that where Abby gets kidnapped or something like that, and they have to go to this location, and that's where they'll find Springtrap and have to fight him and hopefully burn down the location just like FNAF 3. So yeah. Now in FNAF 4, it's just another question who we're gonna play as and what role Michael Afton will have. It's mainly believed that in the mini games we of course play as the crying child, but in the main nights of the gameplay we play as Michael Afton going through these nightmares that were caused by the crying child, because he murdered him in that sense with Fredbear, and that's where the gameplay takes place. So is that going to be the case with FNAF 4? How are they going to go that route, because obviously FNAF 4 is a prequel, but with the movies it really does seem like they're going in chronological order, one after the other in the timeline. So with FNAF 4, is it going to be Vannesa somehow in an experiment? Is it actually going to be nightmares? What are going to be the nightmare animatronics? That's a whole mystery, but I just wonder what role Michael Afton is going to have. And that also depends, of course, how they end the FNAF 3 movie. Because I personally do hope or believe that Michael Afton will have some sort of redemption arc, just like Vannesa. It doesn't seem that likely because he seems really hard-headed in the idea that he has to carry on William's legacy and that they're his and they belong to him, which is a crazy idea, but I do hope that he has some redemption, especially with Sister Location. I think that role, or that kind of main character role, should be for Michael Afton, not Michael Schmidt. Although I love that character and what they're doing with him, I think Sister Location is definitely with Michael, and the idea of looking for your sister, which is, another mystery in the movie because we don't know where Elizabeth is, but it's Michael looking for his sister, and then he gets scooped, and then he goes back for his father, which leads to FNAF 3 and 6, which is, again, different, they'll do it here. But I do think in Sister Location it should be Michael. But in FNAF 4, it really depends how they want to do it. I don't know. I could see them doing something, with both of them where Vannesa and Michael are experiencing these nightmares somehow, and that they have to work together. Maybe that could be the redemption arc. I don't think we'll get one yet in the FNAF 3. But if they were to do one redemption arc with the next trilogy, in FNAF 4, 5, and 6, I do think FNAF 4, that's where Michael, we could see him redeem himself. And then in Sister Location goes to find his sister or for some purpose, and that's where he would be scooped and then literally become the purple guy. I hope that's what they go to. It doesn't seem that far-stretched anymore, especially now with the puppet possessing people. I think it's pretty easy to imagine now how they could make Ennard go inside a body and then kind of the body rot, turn purple, and that would be Michael Afton. Or if they really do Michael Schmidt, I don't know, let's be fine with it too. I also hope in FNAF 4 or FNAF 5 or even FNAF 3, the next movie, we see some sort of flashback with Michael. We of course already saw Vannesa and her relationship with their father in the first one and now this movie, but I want to see that with Michael. Was he more obedient than Vannesa? Was he just someone who really wanted to listen to his dad and really wanted to make him proud in that sense and do whatever it takes, like we kind of see now? Was he someone that fought with his father? How was the relationship with Vanessa? I also wish we saw that. Were they good siblings to each other? Did they hate each other? Did one of them believe in William more than the other? I think there's just so much they could do there. In the house, we obviously see photos of both of them with William, and also Miss Afton is what it looks like, but they purposely cut off her face. I'll pull up the pictures here, but in the behind the scenes with Daco and the other YouTubers who went, you see that her face, you know, the mother of the Aftons, is always looking away. It's always like purposely cut off somehow, and I wonder what the reason for that is. Why they're trying to hide this identity, who she is, and ultimately what does it matter for. You know, is she gonna come back in FNAF Security Breach years down the line and become kind of that villain, or is she still alive? Where is she? I think that's a cool possibility that they could go around, or maybe they'll do like the games, the big game theory that she is possessing Ballora. I could also see them doing something like that, but it's hard to say. But again, I really do just want to see Vanessa and Michael interact more in these flashbacks, or even just in the present time. What does that relationship look like? Because ultimately it really does matter a lot for how the rest of the story plays out. But now I want to look at the other Aftons, and more specifically the Crying Child Afton, which I know has a ton of names out there, but for now I'll just call him the Crying Child. Where is he? What is he? Is he Garrett? Is he an actual, like, an Afton somewhere else in the franchise? This is something I talked about a lot with Var and Unnamed Security Guard in our live streams, but I think Garrett is such an important character in the first movie, and here he's only mentioned twice by name, and that's it. We don't see him in flashbacks, we don't see the actor itself or himself, we don't see, you know, the animatronic he's probably possessing. This is a huge mystery that I really thought they'd address by now, but they still haven't. Honestly, my best guess now is that Garrett is probably going to be the stand-in, especially with the photos that I talked about earlier and behind the scenes. We don't really see another child, we only see Vanessa and Michael in all the photos, so it really does seem like they are the only two Aftons, meaning we're still missing someone else I'll also talk about soon. But for now, the Crying Child, because it doesn't really seem to exist in the games, I think our best explanation probably will be Garrett. Now, how that will work, I'm not really sure. I think if they were to give us some answer, it won't be till the next movie or till the fourth one. But the best thing, or the best way I see them answering this, is that William kidnapped Garrett for some reason. Also, we don't know why. And we're kind of take him as his own for some reason. And that Michael, you know, doesn't see him as his brother. You're not really mine, this and that. Look, there's Fredbear's mouth, I'm gonna throw you. And that's kind of where that starts. Meaning that it is, dual golden, I think they call it, you know, theory where there's two souls possessing Golden Freddy. I might be getting that wrong, I'm sorry if that's not the name. So here it would be the blonde boy from the FNAF, the first movie, and even this one where we see him again, and then the other soul inside Golden Freddy would be Garrett. But why we haven't seen him yet, or why he hasn't shown himself, is just so mysterious. Like, is he even an animatronic at this point? Where is he? I think that's something I'm so surprised they didn't answer by now. But for now, I think that is my best explanation, and if I were to solve it, however you want to look at it, that is the best way you can say for now. That, again, William takes this child, you know, and tries to raise him as his own for some reason, or even if you just wanted him for the nightmare experience, that could be another, you know, the nightmare experiments, that could be another reason. But again, Michael doesn't see him as his brother. Maybe Vanessa tries defending him, but Michael still, you know, grabs him with his bully friends, throws him in Fredbear's mouth, and that's how that would play out. And I think that's how it makes the most sense, just because I don't think they're gonna do another Afton review. I think Michael was more than enough in that sense. We just don't see him anywhere else, so for them to just say, oh, we have actually another sibling that's at this point, seems far-stretched. I just don't think they'd go that route. But I think the only issue with this kind of theory or idea right now is that William does say, oh, I killed your brother, now I'm gonna kill you in the first movie. So obviously that goes completely against what I'm just saying with Michael being the one. But I don't know, they could still do something like that. But if William did kill him, then where and why? You know, what animatronic did he stuff him into if that's the case, and why kidnap Garrett? But if they really were to go the route where there's another Afton, then the reason they're not mentioning him is because they're so traumatized by that experience where Michael threw him in the mouth of Fredbear, and that's why, you know, they bury it down and they try not to mention it. We'll learn about it in the fourth movie. And maybe he died so young he's not like in photos. That's the only way I can see to explain it. But we're still missing that kind of crucial Crying Child character that I hope will get some way or another. So now I want to look at the other Afton, Elizabeth Afton, and one of the other big reveals of this movie that I was freaking out for when I saw in the theaters, Circus Baby. Yes, Circus Baby was in the movie for a slight second, but I think this reveal tells us a lot, and especially about Elizabeth Afton and whether or not she's actually going to be in this timeline. Now with Elizabeth Afton and like the Crying Child, I don't think they're going to do a reveal in a couple movies down the line where they tell us there is a secret Afton that we never found about until now. I think in that sense it's a bit repetitive, and I just don't think they will go down that line revealing a new Afton every new movie. I think if anything, we have two characters that will be the stand-in for Elizabeth, being Abby and Vanessa. Abby was originally and is still being believed to be the stand-in for Elizabeth. Not only do their names line up when, you know, Abby's shortened for Elizabeth, but in general she would be kind of the younger sibling of Michael. But obviously now we know there is another Michael Afton, so although I do think it can still be the case, I think they'll instead go with Vanessa, just because in the games it is an Afton to be killed by Circus Baby. So although they could do Abby, again, I still think it makes more sense for it to be an Afton, and again for it to be Vanessa. But that would have to mean that Vanessa would be killed by Circus Baby, as in the games Elizabeth is killed by Circus Baby and she's killed when she's a child. So obviously they can't really do this here. So the only way I see this happening is in FNAF 4 at the very end, they somehow find the bunker, or somehow Circus Baby is revealed again, and then that she would scoop Vanessa and her soul would possess Circus Baby. But even then, I think it would be weird for her adult soul to be possessing Circus Baby, especially when in the games and even in the movie's timeline, it's always a child's soul possessing the animatronic, and that's kind of the horror of it, you know, is an innocent soul being tortured inside this animatronic and can't be freed. So for that reason, at the same time, I don't think it can be Vanessa, although I do think she is the stand-in for Elizabeth, if that makes sense. But when actually looking at Circus Baby herself in this big moment, it actually looks like her eyes are already glowing green, the same eye color as Elizabeth in the games. Now before Circus Baby kills Elizabeth, her eyes are glowing blue, as that's probably the default of the animatronic's eyes, but after she scoops Elizabeth, that's when her eyes start glowing green, signifying that Elizabeth's soul is now possessing this animatronic. So in this moment, it looks like Elizabeth is already possessing Circus Baby, which is weird, because again, that would have to mean there's a secret Elizabeth Afton that was never mentioned and won't be mentioned until Sister Location, and that'll be another moment like in the FNAF 2 movie where Vanessa will have to go to Mike and be like, hey, by the way, I had a younger sister who was killed maybe before even she was born, and now it's possessing this animatronic, which again could make sense, but I think it's just weird for them to do another secret Afton. But yes, and I don't think I'll pull up a picture because the movie isn't out yet, but her eyes are slightly glowing green is what it looks like, so that means that she's already being possessed by someone. And I think the other evidence for her already being possessed is that she kind of turns on by herself and looks at Vanessa. You know, she's shut off when Vanessa finds her, but then she turns herself on and then her eyes glow green and she just looks at her, almost kind of saying that she's turning on by herself, you know. And again, this would only be possible if she was being possessed, and maybe if she is being possessed by Elizabeth, this would be Elizabeth looking at her sister, you know, looking at the sister that she might have even never known if this was something that happened so early on in the timeline. Which of course brings me to the timeline. In the games, one of the biggest debate is who died first, you know, what was William's motives, who did he kill first, was it an accident, you know, things like that. The biggest ones are the crying child was first, Elizabeth, or Charlie. Now at first, obviously when you're watching the movie, it seems like Charlie was the first. 1982 is a pretty early date, but we really don't know when this nightmare that Vanessa is experiencing is happening in the timeline. It could be earlier than Charlie's death or around at the same time. Personally, I think it's earlier. Vanessa looks to be pretty young in this flashback, and if it is before Charlie, that means that Elizabeth would be the first soul or the first person that was killed by an animatronic. And of course this one would be on accident, but if this is the case, this would contradict a lot, since in the games William makes the Funtime animatronics to be murderous animatronics, and Circus Baby is, you know, one of her programs is able to kill children when she's alone in a room, and that's how she kills Elizabeth. When she's alone in the party room, Elizabeth is scooped by Circus Baby, and then she possesses the animatronic. So if she is the first, then why is William already making these murderous animatronics? That's why I want to say maybe she's actually the second. I think it makes sense that Charlie was the first one murdered in 1982, but again, we're still missing a motive, but besides the point. So if she's killed in 1982, then William would find out, hey, the soul's possessing an animatronic, I want to mess around with this, I want to experiment with a remnant, and that's when he would go make the fun times and make them these murderous animatronics. Then Circus Baby would kill Elizabeth, and then the nightmare would happen where Elizabeth is already inside Circus and she sees her sister. But even then, Circus Baby's appearance tells us that this animatronic and that the fun times happened so early on in the timeline, which is a big reveal since it might also apply to the games. So if there is an Elizabeth, and trust me, I know that's a big if, she would be possessing Circus Baby, and she would be one of the first victims of William Afton, even if it was unintentional. But this brings me to the locations in the pizzerias, because if Circus Baby already exists, that means that either Circus Baby's world or Circus Baby's entertainment and rental already exists around at the same time as the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So where does Afton Robotics fit in this all? Is it one of those things where William made Circus Baby's world his very first location as Afton Robotics, and would then work with Henry to make the Fredbear's location and the other Freddy locations? This to me makes the most sense, That's what already established, Fun Times and the others way early on. And then with Henry, his partnership, that's when Fredbear's and the other locations. But it makes the most sense to me that Circus Baby or the Funtime Animatronics and their locations would be, in that sense, William's first kind of location and his own personal project that we won't find about till way later on in the timeline. But this also makes me wonder what locations they're going to pull from the games, because in the games we essentially have two Funtime locations. We have Circus Baby's Pizza World and Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. Circus Baby's Pizza World was before Elizabeth was murdered. I think it was actually in the day that the location is supposed to open. Elizabeth gets too close and then she scoops her, and then the location never opens and is closed down. Then later on, somewhere in the timeline, not clear where, William opens Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, obviously a rental service with the Fun Times, and that this is the bunker location. So which one are they going to pull from in the movie? It makes sense if they do both, but I also think for continuity reasons and to make things maybe a bit easier on us, I think they would only pull from one. I think it makes sense that Circus Baby World and Entertainment Rental are almost going to combine, and that they'll just be one bunker where it was a rental service and at the same time kind of this pizza place. But again, this means that it's one of the earlier locations and one of the first, most likely, that William created on his own. So where is it then? That's another question. Obviously in the games it's widely believed, because of the books and because of other evidence, that the bunker is under the FNAF 4 house, which may or may not be Experiment House. But if this is the case, then the same house where we see the nightmares, it could be that somewhere in there's like a lever or some elevator that takes us to the bunker where Circus Baby is. And that also makes sense, this is, I think, in the attic area of their house where Circus Baby is on and where his workshop is. So then all he would need to do is just bring the animatronics down into the elevator, and then they would be back in their location. So I do think that would be the reveal in FNAF 4, where FNAF 4 they face the nightmares, they get out of the experiments, whatever it is, and then at the very end, even if it's a post-credit scene, they somehow find an elevator, and that brings them all the way down to Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, which again would be really cool and a huge reveal. In that case, it could be possible that Vanessa and Michael never even knew about this sister. It could be that this was the first Afton, and that in his early years, William Afton's early years, he created this location, but before it was ever open, it closed down because his only daughter, was murdered by Circus Baby. And maybe it's this possession that kind of made him want to experiment more. But again, why would it be this monstrous animatronic, this murder machine? Why would he create that first when he hasn't really killed anyone else, and then this one was an accident? So again, there's some problems there, but I think that makes the most sense, where that's another reveal, it's like, oh, she's actually, Vanessa would say, oh, that's actually my sister, I didn't know about her, and she's in this machine, and we need to try to free her or save her. And that's where Michael comes in, redemption arc, wants to help out as much as he can, and then gets scooped at the end. I think that'd be really cool. And I also wonder where Chica's party world is gonna fit in. That's a location we find about around this time, with FNAF Sister Location, all that we first learned about Chica's party world. I wonder where that's going to fit in. Obviously, now we have an answer with Secret of the Mimic. We actually learned it's one of the early locations. It's like this mascot Chica, and it's a partnership with Murray's Costume Man and Edwin Murray. So I wonder, I don't think they'll go that route. Honestly, I was hoping we would get some Mimic Edwin Murray, David, anything like that revealed in the movie, even if it's just the logo of MCM. I wish we saw that. That's another thing I talked about a lot with Voir and Unnamed Security Card, was that we really wanted any Secret of the Mimic reference, but obviously we didn't, which is okay. But if they were to go that route, I think it would be really cool, but that would have to mean that Edwin is somewhere out there in the world, and I don't know if that's going to be the case. And even if it is, we won't find out for a long time, but you never know. We could get some Chica's Party World Easter egg later on in the movie, and perfectly in Sister Location. But now looking at other animatronics, we do actually get some reveal for the Withered animatronics. This was something a lot of us was wondering, including myself. If we would get retrofit theory, would we get the unwithereds? What would kind of be the answer? And the answer is something we're pretty familiar with, being that the withereds are simply prototypes, just used for spare parts. So no unwithereds, and in that sense, the ones from the second location are the originals, if you were to think about it. So I just thought that was a cool reveal and give us some answer. But again, that doesn't mean it's the same one in the games, since in the games we get more of a different answer. Or I guess, again, it really just depends what you believe in. But I do think the Wizards had a good explanation in this movie, and overall they were just cool to see. I wish they had a bit more screen time, but either way, it was really cool to see them in theaters, like on the big screen, these real life animatronics. And we also saw Shadow Bonnie. Now, this was actually something I missed in the theater. It wasn't until my brother pointed it out to me. He's like, did you see Shadow Bonnie? I was like, what? No, I was too busy writing down something that I totally missed him for a split second, but he is there. It is very cool. It's interesting to note that he is actually a shadow here, like in the FNAF 2 movie. This is something I've theorized for a while now, being that Shadow Freddy is a real animatronic, and we saw that in the movie. It's a real suit where Max gets stuffed into, but Shadow Bonnie is not a real suit. It is definitely a shadow. Now, I don't think they'll give us a remnant explanation, not for a long time, but that is kind of the route it looks like they're going to, kind of being that it's not something real, it's an illusion, or it's something that it's a manifestation of something, agony, remnant, whatever you want to call it. So I think that was a really cool reveal, and I think one of my favorite parts in that sense, even though I didn't really see it. But now I really want to talk about the big reveal at the end in the post-credit scene, Springtrap, and the perfect setup for Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Like I said earlier, here we see employees of this new haunted house that are trying to recreate the Fazbear experience, and that they're getting props, anything they can find from the original location, and that in the back, the employees find a secret room that of course was housing Springtrap. Now, we don't really see him too much until towards the end, but like I said earlier, we get the infamous line, "I found a real one," which is just cool to hear, and I hope honestly that actor plays a phone dude. I think it'd be a cool kind of tie into obviously this movie, and that we could hear him say the line again, because I just think it's so cool that they set it up perfectly. But yes, we get Springtrap's revealed. Again, I don't think I'll probably put up a photo, maybe a 3D model in that sense, closest thing we have. But I think his design looks amazing. We even kind of get that recreation to the poster where only one of his eyes lit up. I think it was just so cool, and he looks amazing. We don't really hear William or see movement besides the eye glowing up, but I'm sure they'll save all that for Five Nights at Freddy's 3. But yeah, now we have a perfect setup to Fazbear Fright. Obviously in the games, one of my biggest worry, and something that I talked about a lot in the live stream, is that there is a 30-year time jump from the previous game to FNAF 3, you know, whatever you want to call that game, either Sister Location or FNAF 1. So I thought they were going to go some route. I thought even 15 years. I thought they were going to do some time jump, that meaning that they'll probably have to recast a lot of the younger actors, which I didn't want, because I love everyone as the characters now in the FNAF movies. So I was a little sad that I thought that was going to happen, but I was totally wrong. This movie takes place in 2002, which I'm pretty sure is 2 years later, or 2 years after from the first movie. So there's only really a 2-year time jump, which is more than enough, and I think it's perfect. And if it works just like that, then it's fine, because I guess to me, the reason I even thought they would have to do a time jump is because there would need to be years or decades for William to rot and to become one with Springtrap. But in the movies, it looks like it only took 2 years, and again, it's more than enough. Springtrap, or the yellow rabbit, already has like his darker olive color, you know, looking much more like Springtrap, and he looks way more withered, and it looks so cool. And again, it was perfectly set up. I already said how I personally think it's Michael Afton who is running the haunted house, or this Fazbear Fright experience, which still makes a lot of sense, and there'll probably be some reunion. I don't necessarily know how they're gonna take Springtrap there. I know they had the dolly, or I'm assuming they have some truck, but I do definitely think it won't be a scenario like FNAF 2 where Springtrap will be roaming around. It definitely does look like he'll just be in the FNAF 3 location. But the reason he was even able to be let out is because of the FNAF 1 animatronics and their souls being freed. It's something I'll talk about soon, but that was also a huge reveal. But so far, it does look like obviously Springtrap's gonna be the antagonist for FNAF 3. But this also brings up the Phantom animatronics. Every animatronic in this movie that we know of so far basically gets destroyed or defeated in some way. Like I said earlier, the FNAF 1 souls are freed, so their animatronics kind of just fall apart because they left the location, and then the FNAF 2 animatronics are destroyed by the FNAF 1 animatronics, and this really cool kind of almost Avengers Endgame moment is what it felt like. They zoomed in on each of the FNAF 1 animatronics with awesome music in the background, and I love that moment. But yeah, so I wonder how they're gonna do Phantoms, because at first I thought there would be some real animatronics, maybe spare parts like the withers, prototypes, whatever you want to call it. But now I think they'll go towards more of the kind of illusion route, especially with the puppet, even though she is possessing Vanessa. That's why I'm not really sure. I think that's one of the parts of FNAF 3 I'm not really sure what they're going to do. I do hope they make the actual animatronics, just because I love the set production and the work that goes into the animatronics. Can you just imagine the Phantoms? I think it looks so cool. So I do hope they go for some real animatronic route. But I think for now, all we know for sure is just that obviously Springtrap coming back. I think Michael Afton's going to be in charge. And then I think it's going to be a mix of Michael, Vanessa, and Abby going to the location for some reason and having to fight Springtrap head on, which would be really crazy, because even Matthew Lillard already teased that, which I'll pull up now. I think this will even lead us right to FNAF Pizzeria Simulator, which I know is movies away, but in that sense, if this movie does end with Springtrap being destroyed and then being burned in a fire, then of course that post-credit scene, or probably Sister Location's post-credit scene, could be William rising from the ashes of the fire, kind of rocking the Scraptrap design. I hope they give us some logical reason there, because in the games they have such drastic designs and we don't really have a reason or a logical explanation for it all. But here I think they could give us a smoother transition where either William had to find a new suit and like wear this new suit, or it really is just the Spring Bonnie suit withering to the point where it looks like Scraptrap. But it is just weird because we might see William's skull, so I don't know how that's gonna work here in the movies, but I'm sure they'll figure it out. I also wonder if Henry will have some role in the FNAF 3 movie, which would make a lot of sense, even though in the games we obviously don't really see him until Pizzeria Simulator. But in the mid-credit scenes, we don't get, obviously, you know, a scene, but we do hear the voice of Henry calling Michael or Mike Schmidt to warn him about the animatronics and to warn him about Charlie. It's this really cool moment where it feels like we're just hearing a moment from FNAF 6 where he has like the tapes and he's leaving a message for us. I think it's really cool, and it sets up his role in some movie. And again, I don't know if it'll be FNAF 3, but here he says that he still has technology from the past locations, and although it's outdated, he can still use it to track animatronics. Now, we don't know if he's talking about the toys. We also don't know when this phone call is taking place. It could be as everything is happening in the final act of the movie, so he doesn't know yet, but it looks like he can track other animatronics. And again, if he is talking about the toys, fine, but he could be talking about other ones, fun times, you know, somehow if the nightmares are real, whatever that want to look like. He's definitely going to be a big asset to the future movies where he is tracking these for us, and he's basically the inside man for these animatronics, as he even reveals in the scene that he was the business partner of William Afton. It does seem like something happens at the very end. I don't know if Charlie comes for him herself or something cuts off with the phone, but I don't think Henry would be killed. I think that would be way too soon. I definitely think he needs to have such a big, huge role in FNAF Pizzeria Simulator, and that they'll probably use him kind of in minor roles until that point, but again, he will definitely be there to help Mike and Vanessa to track these animatronics, whatever those look like, and to eventually stop Springtrap, I think. I don't know if he go in the pizzeria. I think that'd be cool. There's like some sort of fight or reunion there, you know, William versus Henry, but I think for the most part, he'll kind of be working behind the scenes like we hear with this phone call. But now I want to look at the missing children incident and the victims of this incident, and most importantly, their appearance at the very end of the film. Like I said earlier, they show up in this Avengers Endgame-like moment where they rescue Abby, Vanessa, and Mike by destroying the toy animatronics. It's a really cool moment, and before this, we actually find out Mike goes to the first pizzeria from the first movie and basically begs the animatronics to come save them because they're outnumbered and just come save Abby if they really did care about her. And clearly they did, because they go to Mike's house and I think Foxy like decapitates Bonnie. The original Bonnie takes care of Mangle, Freddy takes care of Mangle, and then Chica also destroys Toy Chica in a really cool moment. But most importantly, from this moment, we learn that because these souls left their pizzerias, they were actually freed, which is a huge moment from FNAF 3, which is Happiest Day. Now, it isn't one for one, obviously, but we can assume that this is what it's meant to represent, since in Happiest Day, the 5 souls are freed alongside Golden Freddy and part of the puppet at least, but I'll get back to that soon. So, of course, here, Golden Freddy, the spirit of Golden Freddy, which, by the way, we don't see the animatronic itself. I was a little let down by that because I love Golden Freddy and the design, especially the one they win. I think it's a really cool one. We don't see the animatronic itself, which was a letdown personally because I love the Golden Freddy design they went with, but we do see the actor and he gives another great performance. So most importantly here, like I said, they leave the pizzeria and this essentially frees their soul, which is very different from what we get in Happiest Day. Happiest Day, depending on who you believe, if it's the crying child, the vengeful spirit, whoever that be, here the vengeful spirit, or again whoever it is, gets their happiest day, which is basically a recreation of the birthday party they never get. In FNAF 3, assuming you play as Michael, you go into different mini games and collect cake for this birthday party. I think it's a total of 5, where on the 6th night, after collecting all of them and after completing different mini games, you find yourself at this birthday party and you find the MCI victims with their masks on, and you deliver the piece of cake to Golden Freddy. After this, Golden Freddy stops crying, has his mask on, and their souls are freed, signified by the balloons going up in the air. A pretty nice moment, I think, and it's just one that very symbolic in the sense where this person or this soul was finally able to get their birthday party that they missed out on because they were either killed by William or because they were killed in the bite of 83. A really cool moment that we just aren't getting here. Here instead, it's more of a, it's hard to say if it's more of just convenience, but it's just something that happened very quickly. And if they were to follow the game's lore, which obviously they don't because it's on timeline, they would have waited until the third one, but here they did it in the second one, again in a very quick moment that I don't know how I feel about, because I love Happiest Day and everything that it represents. So for it to be done quickly here, feels interesting, and I wonder if the MCI will still be around somehow. Will we see them in like dreams again? It's still interesting. We do know in a sense they've been freed, but we don't know to what extent. So although I wish we got more of a happiest day moment, we still can, honestly, in the next or the next couple of films that follow. But for now, it seems like the missing children are free, and even Golden Freddy, that's why I said earlier that it doesn't seem like he's going to be the vengeful spirit, because he got freed in this moment already. So instead, I still think that role will lie with the puppet, and time will tell what happens with the MCI. Are they really freed, or will we see them return? I hope we see them return, because again, I don't know how they would do this practically or in live action, but I think seeing this happiest day take place some way or another, even if they do an 8-bit style minigame like the games, you never know. I do think it is something that is necessary for the FNAF lore, in my opinion. This again is my opinion, just because I love that moment and these mini games that lead up to it. But I do wish we can get something like it eventually, but again, we won't find out really till the next movie. But now I want to talk about the very ending of the movie, which is pretty quick, and it honestly is left on a cliffhanger. After Mike and Abby are able to leave with Jeremiah, we actually see that the puppet possesses Abby. Mike, as I said earlier, Mike is able to get Abby out of, or the other way around, is able to free Abby from the puppet, but after that, they of course leave, and then we see the puppet possess and take control over Vanessa, and that's where the movie ends. Again, it's a pretty big cliffhanger, and we don't really know where they're going to head with it. Something else I mentioned is what effect does this have on them? Something I think that could be cool is, like, what does the person see when they're being possessed? Like, for example, with the first movie in the end of that one, where we saw Vanessa in like a coma-like state, many of us thought, oh, what if, down the line, there she experiences the nightmares, and then we see the nightmare animatronics, and that's like FNAF 4, it's on her head, which in a sense could be how they did it, practically, because obviously the nightmares don't really exist. But now, what if instead they do it here, in FNAF 2 or in the next one, she's being possessed and we don't know what it looks like, and in her head she's kind of seeing these nightmares or the experiments that her dad put her through, and that's how they could do FNAF 4, where they have to set her free. But that means for the entire third movie, she would be under the possession of Circus Baby, or sorry, not Circus Baby, the puppet, meaning we won't really see her as herself until the fourth film, and even then that fourth film would take place inside of her head as the FNAF 4 nightmares. So I don't think it's too likely, but I do think it is a cool idea. Even with Abby, what did she see when she was being possessed? Did she have her own nightmares, nightmares with animatronics from the first movie, even though she talks about it like story with the kids on the bus, which I thought was funny. So I think that's a cool idea, they could take it, but I mean, really, there's an endless amount of opportunities, It could also be that Vanessa being possessed by Charlie goes back to William Afton, and in some way they work together, because again, I said it earlier, the puppet doesn't blame William Afton for her death, she blames the parents. So could we see a possessed Vanessa, a Michael Afton, and Springtrap William all work together in FNAF 3, where then Mike, Abby, and maybe Jeremiah have to work together to somehow stop them? Or another way they could do it is we actually get Happiest Day through the possession of Vanessa. Earlier in the movie, we actually see Vanessa as a child talking to Charlie, but she's in her child spirit soul. Basically what we saw in the first FNAF movie, where Mike grabs the Foxy boy and he turns around and he's got tears of blood in that sense. Basically what we get in the FNAF games, where the sprites are crying and it's like gray or black, that's exactly what we get with Charlie. It's a really cool scene where for some reason Vanessa's still able to see Charlie just as this vengeful spirit in a sense. So then she's the one who gives her the music box, and that's how she figures out that's what puts her to sleep. So it could be something like that, where inside of her head, Abby or Mike travel there and help Vanessa as a child to, talk with the puppet and to, in a sense, convince her that, hey, remember, it is William's fault, not the parents. Not only free Vanessa, but then help us take him down type of thing. I could see something like that, because they are really leaning toward the dream and kind of the spirit and the possession they have over those dreams and the influence. It's pretty cool. So I do think that is the other route they could take it. I'm sure there will be some battle there where Vanessa obviously wouldn't want to be controlled, or at the same time, maybe she will. Maybe she gives up, because at the end, Michael kind of says, just get away from us, I can't trust you anymore, which is kind of fair on his part. So it could be one of those things where she doesn't have anyone at this point, her brother is evil, her dad is, of course, evil as well, and the person she did see as family, Mike and Abby, are leaving her, so this would leave her in just this state of giving up and to be let. In that sense, she would want to be taken over by Charlie, just because she doesn't have a reason to keep going. And that's where that story would follow. FNAF 3 not only dealing with Springtrap, but also having to free Vanessa somehow. Again, I think it'd be in her head, again, kind of not only freeing the puppet, but also just making Charlie realize what really happened in 1982. But I think it's pretty safe to say that she will be evil and will have some impact on everyone's lives throughout the next FNAF movie, but I don't think she'll stay possessed for longer than the third one. And again, I think in FNAF 4, it'll be some kind of experiment or in someone's head that's how we'll see the nightmares. And then in Sister Location, at some point, Mike already had his redemption arc and he'll go down there with everyone else and get scooped. And then Pizzeria Simulator, I think it's hard not to follow the same route the games do, where it's kind of finding the remaining animatronics. Henry will help, and then they'll burn them down. So that's kind of, I guess in that sense, to simplify the rest of the movies and how I think they would look. But with that, this is basically my attempt to solve the FNAF 2 movie just one night after seeing it, and even then, it hasn't been a full day yet. But it was a lot of fun working on this video. I know, again, it's a different type of video where I'm laid back and not really scripted. So I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry if you didn't really enjoy this one, which is fair. Because usually I have my scripted, I have my script in front of me and I read it or whatever. But I had a lot of fun with this. This was a very laid back type of thing. And I could see this maybe being a series at one point where I talk with other people in more, again, the laid back environment. It's just a lot of fun. And I think it was really nice not having to plan out my thoughts and just yap about the movie, because I had a lot of thoughts, and even then I think I could have gone on more, but like I said earlier, I'm working on other things. I will put up some teasers here for the Help Wanted as a classic FNAF game. I'm really excited about this one. I think it's my favorite, and I think I've been working on it the longest game concept, and I'm really happy with it, and I'm really excited for you guys to see it, which will come out on Christmas, so the 25th of this month. So yeah, if you made it to the very end, comment something like classic FNAF game or anything with the word classic on it, and I will include you in the classic video. There's a segment where they go over different developers or something. I don't want to spoil it, but I will put your name in there. So if you actually made it to the end, if someone does, and survive me yapping for this long, comment down classic or anything like that, and I'll make sure to include you somewhere in the next the classic FNAF game video. So yeah, let me know if you guys want more videos like this. I hope you enjoyed my analysis or me trying to explain everything with FNAF 2 movie, and make sure to comment down below your thoughts. And if you haven't seen the movie, go see it yet. I'm sure you're fine with spoilers at this point, but please go see it, because it really is an amazing movie, and we should support everyone who worked so hard to make it possible. And I mean, I never thought we'd get a FNAF 2 movie. It's insane, and we're probably gonna get a third one and so much more. So yeah, I really do appreciate you guys watching. It means a lot. The support this year has been insane. At the end of the year, I'll make a mashup of all my videos for 2025, and there I'll give my full emotional speech, because honestly, it does mean the world to me how much support you guys have given me this year. And so yeah, so get ready for that at the end of the year too. We'll see how long that video ends up being. So yes, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Thank you all so much for the support, and I will see you guys in the next video.